Okay, we're live. We're live. We're live. We're live. Okay,
And you're still adjusting.
still adjusting. Well, I was perfect, and then I put something in front of the screen.
Can I
Let's
just
try it
say
again.
something that I would really appreciate is just having, as a small business entrepreneur, need an IT guy. I need an
I have an
IT
IT
girl. I
guy.
need I need someone that I can call that I just pay monthly, and we have a maximum amount of time we can use.
Yeah,
Calendly just did
yeah,
a whole mess up. My computer just started over, and suddenly I've got buffers and I've got wonky stuff. I don't know what is going on, and none of it is within my control, and I don't love that. I really want
yeah.
someone who's going to help me, because I'm not the tech person. And then you know what? I go down a rabbit hole, and then I wipe my website out. That happened. That
No,
actually freaking happened.
seriously.
Yeah, about a year ago, I went to do something. GoDaddy was like, "Oh yeah, upgrade here, do your DNS records," and so I did it, and suddenly, website gone. Yeah,
That's no
so
good.
that was a $2,500 mistake. Like, this is the kind of stuff I can't be trusted.
No,
I
no, no. You
cannot be
can't be
trusted with
trusted.
that.
I was
So yeah.
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine last week, and he was saying that he had to take apart his heater, his fireplace, because the air wasn't blowing into their home,
Okay, that's
and his
dangerous.
significant other was out. I mean, the air was going up, but it wasn't blowing out, and that's how they heat their home, or the main part of the house. So he was telling me all about this. And he's like, so I had to take it apart, and then I found this thing, and then I found this other thing, and all I said was, that's when I would have just started crying.
I know I can't.
Literally, it's when I would have started crying. And I said, is there anything that you can't fix? And he said, no, there's nothing I can't fix. He won't do the electrical typically. I mean, he will if he can, but he won't do the electrical. But I'm with you. I think the point here is that I have to call someone.
Trust your
So
experts, Ricky.
trust the experts. Well, I was also saying this week that I can't. I was interviewed on a podcast this week, and I said, I can't believe that people still call me for the work that I do. How do they not know this? How do they not know this? And to your point, it's because I'm the expert on growth strategy, brand strategy, marketing strategy, all of that stuff. But how do people not know this? It seems so simple. But I would say the same thing about the heater. He had the heater up and running in 2 hours.
But Ricky, that's your superpower, right? When
Right.
you are living your superpower and you're living what you absolutely love and you get to make an impact on people's lives, that is when that's the trifecta of goodness.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of people are seeking. You and I just happen to have found it in the businesses that we have and taking all of our expertise from our 30-year careers. And
Right.
here we are. And welcome everyone to Shooting the Shit in a Skirt. Every time, by the way. Oh, hey, Doug.
I know. Sorry.
Okay. This is live, but of course on our other channels it's not. But welcome to Shooting the Shit in a Skirt. Every time I tell someone about our new podcast, which hasn't yet gone live on all the Apple Podcasts and Spotify, everybody starts laughing and says that is the best name ever. So
Right.
we agree, and we are having so much fun doing this. It's so kicking myself in the pants for not doing this sooner because it is a blast. So for everyone listening, thanks for being here. We're just two chicks that met in our 50s, and we instantly said, where the hell have you been my whole life? And our daily conversations are literally life-changing. Some of them are just shenanigans and silly. And even those are life-changing because we're incorporating play and things that, that we didn't know were missing. And we're just grateful that you're here and that hopefully it's impacting your life because we like to give you some little nuggets. And I'm KL, and this is my bestie, Ricky, and we're happy you're here.
Thanks for coming. Today's episode, which is episode 6, we actually punted this to today on purpose because we filmed last Saturday and we were in the mood to talk about all the things we love, which was a really fun off the cuff conversation. And if you didn't pick up episode 5, we absolutely recommend that you do, because today is all about waiting to be noticed, waiting to be picked, and waiting for permission. And when I say it's all about that, it's strategies and our thoughts around what all of that means. And the reality is, this is about getting comfortable with discomfort and advocating for yourself, underlying everything that you do going forward.
Yeah. We see it over and over again with talented women in the work that we do, right? And probably in ourselves in our early days and all the lessons that got us here. And look, if you're waiting to be chosen, unfortunately, you might be waiting longer than you expect and frustration may set in. So we're going to talk about how do you choose yourself? How do you insert yourself in a way that's authentic and feels really, really good for you? But let's start a little bit, Ricky. Maybe you can start with talking a little bit about maybe a time in your career where you waited longer than you should, or, I know this is the case for so many people, but do you have any good examples that come to mind?
Oh, I always have good examples that come to mind, please. For me, I'm a slow starter, generally speaking, right? I was slow to walk. I was slow to talk. I really didn't even start my career till I was in my early 30s. And the beauty of that is I don't have a lot of regrets because I sowed my wild oats in my 20s, right? I changed careers a few times. I traveled a lot. I did a lot of things that were.
I can visualize that. I didn't know you in your 20s, but
no, you didn't. And I think
you're still sowing oats in your 50s. And
I know. I am. Well, have I ever told you about my decades? So my decades, I promise I'll get to the story in a second, but my decades go like this. My 20s were all about education, travels, and shenanigans. My 30s were about getting married and having babies. My 40s were about my migraines. It was a thing. And my 50s are all about education, travel, and shenanigans. So I'm just, repurposing the theme of a decade. But I think there's a lot to be said there because, kids are out. We split our time between the desert and the Pacific Northwest. My husband's from Italy, so we spend a lot of time over there. And it really is just, I don't know, it feels like there's the opportunity to get up to no good and get into trouble with a capital T, but with the experience, right, of 30 years or 40 years or 50 years of a lifetime. So the decisions I make aren't quite as reckless as they used to be, but some of them are still pretty thought-provoking. And you and I have talked about our friendship and the ridiculousness that we've been able to share over the last few years that really have just changed how we show up in the world. And I think how we ended up here on episode 6.
Trouble and shenanigans seems to be the theme.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sorry. Okay. So back to my story. So like I said, I'm a slow starter. I really started my strategic agency career in my 30s. My 40s are when things really exploded. Like I said, I was getting married and having babies in my 30s. So a lot of what we decided as a family was that I was going to be the one that had the flexible schedule, that I was going to be the one who I was going to stop building my career for all intents and purposes and just take a job that I loved, but not something where I was going to grow to be CEO or chief brand officer or whatever. Who knew? I had no design on the outcome, but that was the agreement. When I got into my 40s, the kids started getting older. They were in school at this point. And I had a little more white space freedom, not a ton, but a little more white space freedom. I decided that what was going on in my work world was not enough. But I didn't know how to stop pushing myself away from the table and saying no, right? I just thought I have this personality and all of this energy and I'm winning all this work and I'm running a division and I have all these people working for me and I'm super strategic. I'm just going to keep pushing myself away from the table though and just wait to get noticed because somebody will notice. I remember that somebody who I worked with on my team in client service got hired by a client and I remember feeling super envious of that. Like she got picked and I didn't. And then one of my peers got promoted to head of our department and she got picked and I didn't. So this started to become a theme in my mid to late 40s. And while we'd agreed as a family that I wasn't going down that path, right, of leveling up and leveling up and leveling up, my ego was getting super bruised
Yeah.
and super picked apart. Now, I have talked about this on the podcast, and I've talked about this with you a lot, where I really needed to focus on what was going to fuel my soul. That ego shell is so fragile, right? That's the stories we tell ourselves, the places we think we should be. But the soul and your commitment to yourself are the things that really mattered. So the work for me to do was not about scooting my chair up to the table and leaning in, as Sheryl Sandberg says. It was really about figuring out what was going to fuel me and set me on this trajectory that I'm on now. I didn't know that in my mid 40s. I had a really good mentor, and I just couldn't figure out what the thing was. And she referred me to her executive coach, who I am forever grateful to, because she's really the one that helped me understand what feeds my soul, what I stand for, what my intention was, and what am I committed to? And if I'm committed to being a senior leader in this organization, what does that look like? So starting to design for myself what that looks like. And again, not tied to the outcome at all, but the process of doing that, I learned so much about speaking up, about how I got promoted, the types of roles I wanted. Nobody offered them to me ever. I've never been offered a promotion. I've been given a role that I advocated for myself. I saw the gap, what existed, what was needed, and then I wrote a proposal for it, and they accepted it. And every time I got a promotion, every time I got a pay raise, was because I initiated it.
Yeah.
And let me be clear, when I blew up that job at 53 and jumped into the void, I had no job. I didn't care, but I knew I was going to spend 6 months figuring out what it was. When that next role came along, I knew exactly what my strengths were. I knew exactly how I could help them. And I knew exactly what it meant to be head of growth and strategy for a company. Now, notwithstanding, my values didn't match their values. I took the role for title and money, but I still advocated for myself. And when I saw the writing on the wall that that was not the place for me to be, I got out as quickly as I could. Negotiated a package, which you would have been very proud of, even though we didn't know each other. And then I started my own company. And what I'll say is this: having somebody in your court or in your corner who can prompt you and inspire you and teach you, and I hired a coach to do that, made all the difference in my career, and made all the difference really in my personal life as well. Because I would argue that I don't think we'd be sitting in this room today across from each other had I not done that work in my late 40s.
Yeah. We all have to do the individual work, no doubt about it. And you took that leap. I think a lot of people take that leap. I've hired myself coaches over the years, 4 last year, actually. And, it's a super interesting story. And look, I think the journey of how we get there is our own journey. And you found your authentic voice throughout this process with the help of this amazing coach, and advocating even before that, and writing your own proposals about where you saw yourself, rather than waiting to be chosen. You maybe got a couple gut punches of people that got promoted around you. And that is something that, as a former HR leader, I saw a lot. People would get disappointed if they didn't get considered for the job. And I think there's certainly a fine line between doing really good work and being conscious of how you show up so you are chosen, and advocating and having a plan. So thinking about what might be interesting for you. If we're just sitting waiting, you're likely to get disappointed. You might get disappointed even if you have a plan, but again, it's, as you and I know, at this stage of life, there's also an element of letting go and trusting the process and having certainty that there's a plan for us that we didn't know then. So if I had known that then, I think I probably would have worried less. In my case, I got tapped constantly. I didn't have a plan, but I got tapped. KL, come do this project. KL, come. Okay. I was on fast track programs and constantly being tapped every year for different roles. I had 5 jobs in 5 years, twice in my career.
What
I never,
what does that feel like? Because I don't know what that feels like. I've never been asked to take a role in another company because the client loved what I was doing. I've never been asked to step up. I've always done it for myself. And I love when you talk about this because I think it's the great contrast between us.
yeah.
Because from my perspective, I always say I'm a little
Mm.
bit lazy, right? I know I'm not, but in my, the story I tell myself, is that what it is? So
Yeah.
keep talking because I just find this such a fascinating juxtaposition
Yeah.
between the two of us.
No, if I think about how it felt, I am a learner. So I am hungry to learn and I ask really good questions.
Mhm.
And sometimes that ruffled feathers, but for the people that it didn't ruffle, they wanted me on their team because I would challenge status quo. I would challenge a process that was no longer working. So I think that maybe was, I don't have all the reasons as to why, but how it felt was I was more of a people pleaser and validate, I needed that tap on the shoulder for the validation that I was doing a good job versus knowing that
Mhm.
I was good enough
Mhm.
in my own. That validation helped me to prove why I am good enough. But in my early days, Ricky, I didn't even know what a C-suite was. I didn't know what I knew. We had, regional leaders and we had a president or a CEO, whatever that even stood for. I literally had no clue. I just wanted to keep growing and keep challenging myself and keep learning. That was my hunger and that was my drive. And then it became like, oh, my annual review, like, if there were anything negative on that, I couldn't take, like, I really was, yeah. So seeking it probably for the wrong reasons, and looking for that validation and the beautiful lessons of, I don't do that anymore. It creeps in every so often, I'll get a beautiful note from a client and I don't expect those, but of course, when they come in, it is just like, it's
It's
life changing, so
it
impactful,
is.
so incredible. I got one today that had me in tears. So I, it felt really good to get asked. And then of course there comes a time maybe when you don't get asked and you're like, what's going on? What happened?
Right.
But I do
Right.
think that the piece about getting asked was also always about alignment. And because I was aligned with my strategy, which I didn't even know the word strategy, like, let's be
Right.
clear.
Mhm.
The strategy was just keep growing and learning, keep growing and learning, keep growing and learning, keep growing and learning, and make an impact. And that worked. And so I just kept doing it. It kept working. It kept doing it. It kept working. Kept doing it until it didn't. And I looked around and there was no seat for me. And I kept interviewing for jobs and it wasn't happening. And I was like, wait a minute. Um, no, I'm not waiting anymore. I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah.
And that's something I never knew that I would do either. Right. So
Same.
sometimes
Same.
it's not about waiting longer than you should. Sometimes it's also about going through it. But in the end, it always comes back to you and your alignment and what it is, how you want to show up and what you want to leave. And I hate the word legacy, but how you show up and how you treat others. That's it. Those are the only two things
That's
you can
it, right?
control.
It's all that matters. It really is. What
Yeah.
I think is interesting, there's so many things you said in there that I love, and I just, if I put our collective journeys right next to each other, it's so fascinating. Like, can you imagine if we would have known each other back then? Holy
Yeah.
cow! But I'm a people pleaser also, and my shadow self is really wanting to be liked. So advocating for myself wasn't really advocating for myself. I didn't want to ruffle feathers and I didn't speak up. And I took it to some degree because I felt like I was given a gift with my last big role, as a full-time employee, which was I had total and complete freedom. It was totally entrepreneurial. I created my own destiny in that place. My success was directly connected to me and my team. How could I make impact internally and externally? But the reality was I didn't want to speak up because every time I spoke up, I got beat up. And it was really, really exhausting. So for me, the final bit of advocating for myself was, I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
I can't take it anymore. And the way I'm going to save myself, because I walked in drained in the morning and I left even more drained at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I knew that it was time for me to leave. And it's funny, I was here in Arizona, looking at the clouds in the sky, waiting for them to part. And as soon as they did, I knew exactly what I needed to do, which was resign from that role. And that's how I advocated for myself. And I've never let what happened in that role happen again. I mean, I was there for 15 years, so a lot of things happened. I also learned a lot of incredible things.
Yeah.
What I find super interesting about what we both talked about, though, is there's a theme here. And I don't want to double down on imposter syndrome today, because this is really about how do I show up? How do I stand up? How do I make my voice heard in different ways? But that imposter syndrome thing is for real. And one of the things that I talk about a lot as a recovering agency executive is it takes many years for that stink of agency life to come off of you. And I would probably argue the same thing for you in corporate America. And I've never really worked in corporate America. I've always worked sort of in that agency creative world. But that took a really long time to get over, because I was beat up so often. And part of the process of preparing for today, and we both did this, is we talked to some women in our lives about how they advocate for themselves. Because you guys can hear from us all you want, but we're middle-aged white women who have had fairly successful careers and have started successful businesses on our own in our 50s. And what we both decided that we wanted to do was just hear from others on what self-advocacy means for them. And imposter syndrome truly is a theme that runs through it all. And I, in total transparency, interviewed my daughter the other night, which it was such a fabulous conversation over dinner. But one of the things that she said is, when did you start stepping into yourself and who you are and your expertise? And I said, last year. Because if I really, really think about it, all the work that I've done, all the years of experience, all the years of feeling not like I'm enough, even though I kept advocating for myself in a variety of ways, I can honestly say that until I started talking live about my thought leadership, showing up for clients in a completely different way that wasn't scared that they were going to fire me, because we know 3 things are going to happen in our lives. We're going to pay taxes, we're going to die, and our clients are going to fire us at some point. And really stepping into my expertise and all the growth work and all the education and all the experience I've had over the years, if I really think about it, it's probably in the last year or 2 that I actually feel like
did that help her, scare her, given the fact that she's 25 and right. You're 59. Was that inspiring to her? Was that like, oh God, okay, I've got a lot of years to go? Like, what was her response to that?
Her response was, I'm already doing it now. I'm already advocating for myself now. So I think it was empowering. We're a different generation. Yeah. Right. And I didn't just talk to her. I talked to a friend's daughter who's, an athlete at an Ivy League school. And it was just interesting to get the perspective of these young women. And you and I talked about this before we went on air, that while Gen Z may not be our audience that's listening to this podcast, who they are is the next chapter of what's coming, the next generation that's going to change the world.
Yeah. And this is foundational. What we're talking about is stuff that we learned much later in life, and the fact that they're already implementing it, because I also interviewed my daughter and we asked the same questions, and that advocacy was super interesting. And she's like, yeah, I've already learned to advocate for myself. She was doing it in college. She was doing it in high school.
Right.
And is doing it today. And for her, it's maybe not advocating in terms of, oh, I want a raise or I want a promotion. It's advocating in terms of sharing her ideas and owning projects and following through with results. And instead of supporting, she's actually leading. And that's how she interpreted it. And I'm like, that is fantastic. That is
Right.
exactly what we want. And foundationally, we want to change the world. I'm on a mission to close the gender and racial pay gap. You and I aren't closing it. They are.
They are 100%
Them having these
right.
skills that you and I
Right.
didn't have in our early days. And that's also to say, I want to come back to something that just popped for me as you were talking about just our journeys. Because I said that, I was tapped, or people said, Kale, jump in on this job. I had a lot of situations where I advocated or I
Mhm.
suggested or I challenged something and I got my ass handed to me. I got my ass kicked. And that then sometimes what happened was I would then pull back. I would then worry. I would then
Mhm.
think about how I don't want to ruffle feathers. And so that really worked against me. And now looking back at it is a lot of, people that were maybe uncomfortable. I was challenging them, or that they were feeling less than, or that their project or what they developed wasn't good enough because I was challenging it. So
Right.
I think that's the other thing, or in a boardroom surrounded by men, which was typical,
Right.
saying
Same.
something and the guy next to me saying the same thing. And then the CEO saying, oh, wow, Bob, that was a brilliant idea. And I'm looking
Mhm.
around going, what just happened? I said that like literally 5 minutes ago. And then I'm calling the guys afterwards to say, where the hell are you in jumping in when the CEO says that Kale just said that? That's your responsibility. It's also my responsibility to say, excuse me, I just said that.
Yeah,
Bob,
and that scared
so
what
glad
you're
that
talking
inspired you.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you're talking about throughout my career scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Literally scared the shit out of me. And I know people who know me find that shocking, but it scared the shit out of me. I could not stand up for myself that way.
I think the point is when we, if we come back to these beautiful conversations that we had with these lovely ladies in our life, this advocacy that they don't stop. They don't stop when someone hands their ass to them. They don't stop when
Right.
someone challenges them. They
Right.
don't stop when someone says you're not good enough. They don't stop advocating, and they continue to lean in on their strengths and what they're really good at and focus on what they can control. And if it's somebody else gets a ruffled feathers ruffled, that's on them. And not to spend so much time worrying in your head. I spent way too much energy in my
Yep.
career in my head.
Same.
Yeah.
I want to, can I share with you the findings? Because part of what I did is in the conversations that we've had this past week and the conversations that you and I have been having, I think there's some really interesting themes that came to bear that I don't know, I find fascinating. We talked
Yeah.
about it a little bit in our prep, but I just want to read for a second, and sorry about all the clicking around. I had it open, and then of course, once we went on air, where's that IT guy when we need him, or IT person? It may not be a guy. Where is that IT person when we need them?
Yes.
So there's quite a few themes here. There's 6, but I'll go through them very quickly. I promise these are riveting. One is that advocacy starts with misalignment. So from the interviews and from the conversations we've been having, no one spoke up because they felt bold. They spoke up because staying quiet felt out of integrity. So, their values and reality were drifting way too far apart, and that action actually became a relief. And I think the interesting takeaway here, which I love, right? We talk about getting comfortable with discomfort. The discomfort is data, right? So sometimes it starts with misalignment. You're going to love this next one because this was the original name of our podcast. No one does this alone. All the respondents practiced before they spoke up. So that's a really interesting thing about knowing who your board of advisors are, right? They talked it through with someone they trusted, or they borrowed clarity before they found their own. And really, voice was built in community, not in isolation. I know that our generation is like, just suck it up, elbow to somebody's ribs, do it yourself.
Yeah.
That up and coming generation is really about bouncing it off people, and bouncing it off people they trust, respect, and they have shared purpose with.
Yeah. And preparation.
And preparation. It's funny. I've never prepared for anything except for the last few years of my life.
Wow.
I write a script. I read it. I write speaker notes into presentations now. And a lot of times will walk through a presentation with you or with somebody on my board of advisors because I want to make sure I nail it. I don't want to wing it anymore. Number 3, confidence is accumulated, not inherited, not inherent. Advocacy got easier with time, context, seniority, and watching others speak up without punishment. Confidence followed proof. So in a lot of ways, it's not that we need more confidence. And I think this is really interesting, KL. We need more examples. We need to see more people self-advocating and standing up for themselves in a variety of different ways.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the one that was the shocker of the shocker to me. Work is the hardest place to speak up.
Yeah.
Because the stakes are raised by perception, repercussions, people pleasing, the fear of doing it wrong. Advocating in personal life felt easier because identity and livelihood weren't on the line. The more personal the risk, the louder the fear.
Yeah.
What do you say about that? Because that.
So not unlike those were themes from the conversations you had. Hayden's fit completely into that.
Yeah.
When I think anytime there is a risk of being perceived a certain way, advocacy or sharing your voice makes it a little bit more hard, right? So if relationships could be damaged, or somebody might just perceive you as not smart enough or not good enough or unworthy, whatever it is, if you're sitting around a table at work and you offer a suggestion and someone's like, yeah, that's a bad idea, that then causes you to doubt yourself. So you never want to be seen a certain way. So I think what Hayden said was, and this is very much was me in a very big part of my career, is overthinking how my words will land and learning how to balance honesty, confidence without shrinking yourself, but with also making sure you're not potentially ruffling feathers. So, so what's super interesting about that is what I don't do today is overthink how my words will land, because I'm so in alignment with myself. So that worry isn't there. But before I knew who I was, before I had done that work, I would overthink because I would be worried what the other person would think or how it would be received. That alignment is the work. That alignment and not shrinking yourself and truly knowing who you are, and worrying less about what other people think or how it might be perceived. That's on them, right? That's their stuff.
Right.
That is a muscle. That is absolutely a muscle. Hayden said that it is much harder to do, and I think that yours did the same, much harder to do in a work relationship. Personally, in her personal relationship, she finds it easier to do.
Yeah, same. And that goes back to, right, the soul and the commitment and the ego and the story, because the stories we tell ourselves are where things ultimately, right, start to go awry, and we get inside of ourselves too much. I agree with you. The work is that alignment with self, with your soul, and what you're committed to. And then I think that's where change starts to happen. Like I said, I was just slower to get there, but I got there, and things are immediately clearer to me now in my 50s than they for sure were even in my 40s. Okay.
You're not slower. You're not slower to get there. I think that's also, no one is there. It's
true. You're right. Right. This was my rhythm.
Slower. We all go through our own journey to get there. And it doesn't mean that you were slower. You made choices that made sense for you and your family. And when you ramped up in your 30s, rock and roll, look out world, because here you are.
Here I am. Okay. So the last 2, imposter syndrome comes along for the ride. I love this, especially for high performers. Feeling undeserving didn't stop advocacy. It actually made it heavier. So
say that last part again, please.
feeling undeserving didn't stop advocacy. So, like my daughter said, she was advocating for more work from home time because the traffic in Seattle is horrendous. And she was 4 hours in the car every day. Now part of the freeway is closed. So they've rectified, when you actually need to come in, which is once a week. But she knew she was asking for a lot as a paralegal, right? As part of the admin team, but it didn't stop the advocacy. And what the takeaway here is, you don't wait until imposter syndrome is gone. You just move with it. It's there, you feel it. But number 6 is where this gets really critical, is that advocacy is about stewardship. So it wasn't just about Jessica. It wasn't just about Evan. It wasn't just about Hayden. It's about that stewardship. And this is where everything was reframed in the conversations for me, that advocacy wasn't just for them. It was for the team, for the younger players, because I interviewed an athlete, for the other administrators in the organization, for your friends, for the culture being shaped in real time. And I think this final line says it best. If you want a village, you have to be a villager. So it really becomes about stewardship. So even if you're feeling uncomfortable and even undeserving, that advocacy piece of it is still important, because it's all about, right? You're about, collapsing the gender pay discrepancy. I'm really about making, and we're both about making impact. But my one thing is, I just want to be able to make impact on people and provide inspiration. And I'm all about, right, being the villager. You're all about being the villager. And I think our girls are about that as well. And they're understanding it, and they're much more aligned on the soul and commitment trajectory than the ego and story trajectory.
I'm also, sorry, Ricky, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'm also seeing a stark difference between college and now out of college. And I'm seeing such an interesting concept around friends and her board of directors, whatever she calls them, the people that she is surrounding herself with. She is understanding that on a much greater scale today, and how when you surround yourself with really smart people and people who are taking care of themselves and investing in themselves and wanting to grow, you are elevating yourself every single day. And how that, I love the villager. That's not a word that I have heard. So in practice. So I really appreciate that. There's also a couple of things that I think, if we were just to pivot to, around women in general, and how women receive 2.5 times more feedback than men about communication style. And so, like, you and I are about, let's talk about what's going on. Let's talk about what's happening generationally. Let's talk about that, but let's also talk about what we can do about it. So when we talk about the gender and racial pay gap, we talk about the feedback given. That's up to every single person who is watching, listening to this, that they in their teams are conscious of the fact that, oh, am I giving 2.5 times more feedback to the women on my team than I am the men? And when I sort my spreadsheet at the end of the year to give raises and bonuses out, am I looking at inequities and am I fixing them? It is the responsibility of every single leader who is listening, and everyone who says yes to a leadership role, not waiting for HR to train you, not waiting for some development program, that you go figure out how you can be the best leader. These are stats and things that everybody who is listening needs to be aware of. So we're all human, but that they're aware of that. And then this is a stat that really shakes me. Women are 30% less likely than men to self-advocate for stretch opportunities, even when equally qualified. And we know that the stat of less than 30% of women are negotiating. So this is why we're having this conversation. So whether that be surrounding yourself with the right people, whether they doing the reps, all the preparation, everything that you can do, and getting in alignment so that you can have these conversations that are life-changing for you and game-changing. And high performers, this is another one, high performers who self-advocate are 50% more likely to be promoted. Stop it right now. That is what we are doing
That
here.
is,
That is what
create the opportunities for yourself. Create the
and
opportunities for yourself.
self-advocating is not this. It's
Right.
just having real conversations. Say, hey, last year was a great year.
Right.
Here's what I'm looking forward to in 26. Let's talk
Right.
about feedback both ways. You as my leader, I've got some
Right.
feedback for you.
Right.
Give me
Right.
feedback. Here's what I think I did really well. Here's how I want to grow. Here's where I want to stretch myself. Here's how I want to expand my network. Let's talk about next year. What are the goals of the company? How do I fit into that? And oh, by the way,
Right.
I also want to talk about my financial growth. Talk to me about how I fit in with the leaders at my level and from a
Where
gender
the hell were
perspective.
you when I was doing this stuff?
But that's all it is, Ricky.
It
End of
is. I
year.
know.
You
I know.
put together your self-assessment. My buddy Phil, you know my buddy Phil, our
Yeah.
buddy Phil Dinella. He does this every year. He also tells his boss every year what he wants. That is what we owe ourselves.
We
And
do.
we owe it to the people around us. We owe it to our children and everybody that we're educating. It is really that simple. It doesn't have to be this big I am woman, hear me roar that we have to come in guns a-blazing. No, it's just about having real conversations. And if you can't have those with your boss, who else can you have them with? Who is in your corner? Who is in your
Right.
network? Who do you value and respect? I need to have this conversation. Can you help me with it?
Mm-hmm.
This is what needs to shift and to change so that we can start actually truly changing the game. So
I completely agree with you. There's one thing that I do want to say that I think is really important, and I learned this from our friend Melissa Glick, which is create your own stage. Create your own stage. Create your own stage.
Yeah.
She is the master of it. And if we, when I was reading the outputs from the interviews that I did, one of the things that kept coming to mind was she said that to me probably 3, 4, 5 months ago. It was revolutionary for me because I kept thinking, I have to wait to be asked to be on a podcast. I have to wait to be interviewed. I have to wait to do this. And the reality it was like a slap across the face, like just create your own stage, which is exactly what we did with our Sonoran Social thing up in Phoenix. Anyway, one thing I do want to point out before we get on to the shift and the framework, and I want to be very cognizant of time, is the things that we don't really talk about. And these are good things to be aware of, that women in general, and maybe not this next generation that's up and coming, are taught that visibility equals arrogance, which is bullshit.
Yeah.
When women are vocal, they're labeled as bossy, aggressive, or difficult.
Yeah.
When men are vocal, they're seen as confident, decisive, and leadership material.
And passionate.
Right. Exactly. A woman raises her voice and she's emotional. A man raises his voice and he's passionate, right? And then it was funny. We were having this conversation the other night at home over dinner, and Jessica's boyfriend was there, who we adore, but we were laughing at an email response he sent to someone that he'd CC'd both of us on because they're in the process of trying to rent a house in San Diego. And he was just super curt in the email. Like it was 2 sentences. That was it. And Jessica and I were both saying, had that come from us, it would have been, hello, thank you for your response. Can you help us understand why this? Did you do that? Like we would have gone through this whole thing. It would have been a 5 bullet pointed email. But he still got his point across and he was not sorry about it.
But that's also interesting because if you had received that email that was seemingly curt, right, in your mind, how are we then interpreting that email? And what does that say about us? And then that person's probably pissed off with us. When the reality is we're making up stories in our head every day. And we've talked about this before that do not serve us.
So true.
So whether it's a beautiful paragraph from Ricky or whether it's Jessica's boyfriend that has 2 lines, who cares? Get to the point. Let's just move on. Thank you. Goodbye.
Right. So key truths, the things, how do we make the shift? Being visible is not being loud, right? It's not being loud. Now I'm loud, but it doesn't mean being loud. Owning your work is not ego.
Owning or talking about your work
It's not
or
ego.
sharing a win is not ego.
Right.
It's inspirational.
It's fabulous. Like, I want to know. Now, I'm a little frustrated with like all the posting on LinkedIn right now, but that's just me. And I always take a break in January. But sharing what you do and how you do it and why it matters and how it makes impact is not ego. It is going to help somebody along the way.
Yeah.
Self-advocacy is leadership. No matter where you sit in an organization, in a friend group, if with your board of advisors, it is leadership.
Yeah.
Someone else, and I love this, can't choose you if they don't see you. So again, it doesn't mean being loud, going back up to number one. It means being visible. It means owning your work and being proud of your work. It's advocating for yourself. You don't need to wait to be chosen. You choose yourself first. You said this earlier. Being a victim of your circumstances will never get you anywhere. So how do I show up?
Something you said, Ricky? It's super important. They can't choose you if they don't see you. Seeing you means you better be showing up every day. And that means with the right attitude. That means ready to rock and roll. That means you've got your game on. That means delivering. That means knowing clearly where you're going, where the company is going, how you fit into that. And you better deliver. So we talk about making impact. You and I are making impact on these beautiful stages that we've created.
Right.
But for our daughters, if they don't see you, that means you better deliver when you said you were going to deliver. You better execute that event flawlessly. You better make sure that you're doing everything that your boss is expecting you to do and more, and all that additional stuff that we talked about. That's how people see you, in addition to the self-advocacy. You can be pounding your chest and I want this and I want this and I want this, but if you deliver shit, it ain't happening.
Right.
So there's the preparation, there's the execution, there's the impact, there's the alignment. There's a lot of stuff there. But seeing you is not, I'm the loudest voice in the room. Seeing me is, I'm going to show up. I'm going to deliver. I'm not a victim. I don't complain.
Yeah.
I get it done, and I get it done with optimism and the right attitude. The rest will never fly. Never. Right. I mean, I've had people in my office as an HR leader just, when is it my turn? When is it my turn? When is it my turn? Well, what have you done? What have you done? When we talk about your impact, like, I don't care that you're telling me that it's your turn. Show me what you've done. Talk to me about the challenges of the organization, how you might be able to solve. Like, let's have a business conversation, not a self-advocacy conversation. So I want to be clear on that, because it's not just coming in and knocking on the door. When's my raise? When's my raise? When's, you have to relate it to impact. So make an impact, make sure you're delivering. Right.
And make sure you're collecting it, right, on a regular basis. Like, write it down, have a journal, note it, because
I even better, I'm going to one up you on that. Google Sheet. I am doing this with every single one of my clients.
Oh my God, I love this.
If you and I had done this 30 years ago, we wouldn't have to go back every time we went for a job interview to remember what we did at that job.
Right.
And I'm actually building it with a AI tool with this amazing woman named Leslie Loham. She is building this for me. She's building me both a networking AI tool so that you'll have triggers and when to reach out.
Her.
She's amazing. She's building me the networking tool, and then she's also building this impact sheet. I'm going to actually share both of those with the world on LinkedIn, and I'll figure out how I'm going to do that. But it is going to be something else that I provide to my network, whether I charge $9.99 for it, I don't know, or $50. I don't know what it's going to be, or maybe free. Doesn't matter. The point is, start tracking it, and then, you know, what did you do? How did you do it? And what was the impact? This then are answers to your interview questions for the rest of your career, and you get to pull all those out. So thank you for saying that.
You're welcome. I mean, that's
journal it, because you'll forget it. Put it in a
page. You're right. We have technology now. Sorry, you know, old dog, new tricks, challenging. Okay. Let's get to the framework, to the framework. Like, what do we want people to walk away with from this podcast?
We love things in threes. So there's three ways that we think will be really helpful for you to choose yourself. Number one, say it loud. People can't support what they don't know you want. And say it loud again, not to be aggressive,
Not
but it's
about
like,
raising your voice.
say it to the people in your network, say it to your board of advisors, say it
Yeah.
to your friends,
Yeah.
say it to the people around you. This is what I'm thinking. This is what it might look like. What am I missing? What else is out there? They can't support you if they don't know. It's the same with networking. Tell them what you're looking for, tell them who you are, and that'll spark something. And that sparks a warm intro, which, by the way, Lauren Greif did this statistic in one of her newsletters. Warm referrals convert 900% better than an application. Get out there and start talking to people.
Right. You know, my TED Talk is one resume, 100,000 conversations. So good.
Huge. I didn't
So
know the
good.
title. It's so good, Ricky. I cannot wait. When are we doing the TED Talk?
I don't
get that
know.
out in the universe.
I need to
Anybody
start
listening?
advocating better for myself with the TED Talk. Let's be
Anybody
clear.
listening that knows anybody at TED and is looking for the most amazing speaker, Ricky Pasanelli is your gal. Okay,
Right
number
here.
2, you go.
Okay. Be seen before you're ready.
Yeah.
Right. You've said that you weren't ready for any job that you took. You said yes before knowing how to do it. I call that blind enthusiasm. It's how I've gotten most of my jobs. But be seen before you're ready. And there are tools and tricks to do that. And a lot of it has to do with knowing who you are, what feeds your soul, and what's your commitment to yourself, and what's your commitment to your organization, the work that you're doing and how you do it. I think we should do an episode, because we always come up with a new episode every time we're on here, is about nonverbal communication, because a big piece of that, the stat is 70% of how people perceive you is nonverbal. So that's a big deal, right? So visibility creates readiness, and there's no other way around it. So it has to be the full package. A lot of what I talk about when I'm building a brand strategy for somebody is at the center is you, your brand, your company, your whatever. And then there's all the various touch points. So it looks like a hub and spokes, right?
Yeah.
And all the things that you touch. So really, really important. All right, do the third one.
Yeah, I just want to say something about that. That is a perfect podcast episode. Be seen before you're ready. I also get out of your head as it relates to that, because you are more ready than you realize. If anybody has done any kind of education, you can learn something, right? You can go and learn.
Right.
So you have foundational skills, you have relatable skills, you have skills that are similar. Your job is to figure out, how can I translate this skill that I'm really good at, whether it be operations or solving complex problems, and how do I articulate that to these other areas, so that when I'm talking to people, I can pull that. You are more ready than you realize. And that's just important. I wanted to note that. Okay. Number 3, own your work without apology. No minimizing, no shrinking, no just. A lot of us say just before we say something important, or we say sorry. We've talked about being a Canadian before. Sorry is our mantra. It is
sorry, not sorry.
No, it's not helpful. And it's not helpful to say just. It minimizes what you're talking about. Just own it and say it. Stop shrinking yourself.
I just wanted to follow up, because I'm following up because you said you would get back to me by Friday, the 16th, and I still haven't heard from you. Help me understand where you stand on this.
Yeah. Just and sorry, please remove it from your vocabulary. Please is a good one.
Please, thank you. Yes and no.
It's so cute. So a funny story. So I follow this lovely woman. Her name is Cassie Campbell. She was a friend from, middle school. She's a realtor in Edmonton, Alberta, where I'm from. And she posted the cutest story on her stories the other day. And it was a real estate sign. You know how when it says sold?
Yeah.
In America, it says sold. In Canada,
what does it say in Canada?
Sorry, sold.
Oh.
Sorry, sold. So kind of cute, kind of tongue in cheek. In that case, maybe for the people who were desperately looking for a beautiful home. But okay.
Wait, I have a question. What does it say in Canada? Because you said in America it says sold. What is
sorry, sold?
Oh, it really says sorry, sold?
It was a picture. It said sorry, sold. I'm not joking.
I'm banging on the table. I can't take it. It's too much.
It's too much. Okay, we have to wrap. Do you want to talk about this week's challenge?
Yes, I'll talk about it. Okay, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it so much. So this week's challenge is choose yourself just once, right? It's Friday, so you have until next Friday. We're going to follow up with you. Raise your hand. Ask the question. I saw somebody in the comments said, sit in the front row, raise your hand. I'm a front row sitter. Say what you want. Take the space.
Yeah.
Get comfy with being uncomfy.
I love that. I used to speak up in every single meeting, no matter what. It was what I did. And be careful not to be the person that just goes like on a rant.
Yes, that there's
take up
there's
so much
one.
space that no one else
Right.
can talk. But I always wanted to ask a thoughtful question, and it was always a challenge that I challenged myself to do. Partly because, okay, I was usually the only woman in the room, and it was helpful for me, and it was helpful for me to learn and grow, and to feel like I belonged there. So get comfy being uncomfy. Life is messy. Careers are messy. Careers are uncomfortable.
It's all
There's
messy.
lots of things that are uncomfortable. Get really comfortable with it because it's a reality. So own it.
Yeah. And tag us, DM us, whatever. My challenge for the week is that I am going to figure out my lighting situation once and for all.
It actually got better.
Out of my skull.
It got better. My challenge for the week is to write a TED Talk, and not because I won't necessarily be on the TED stage, but more of a keynote. So you inspired me. I actually left you a voice note before this call that I want to build that with you. So I'm very excited because I have my own personal brand strategist. Her name's Ricky. And, that's something else I think that we are each other's board of advisors. We have others on our lists that are, of course, separate from each other, but it is a daily board of advisors. It is a daily, I'm struggling with this. And it is like sometimes a 2-minute conversation that like unlocks something. Or
well, think about the conversation we had yesterday when I landed in Arizona. You had sent me a note that you had a presentation last night. You were so tired. And I said, I'll call you as soon as I land. And we had a little inspo call.
Yeah.
And I gave you a little kudos from my daughter, who you did some work with when she was negotiating her current role, that she, she KL'd her friend. So
I used a verb, Ricky, like if that doesn't mean like that, I KL'd someone. That is how we make a movement. I Rickied someone. Like that is insane to me. Sorry, keep going.
No. So my point is this, you needed a hand. You reached out. I called you as soon as I could. We spoke for, 10 minutes. I actually didn't even see when Mauro drove in to pick me up. That's how into the conversation I was. But it changed the dynamic, right? And I think the key here and the message here is tap into your people, because they can change your perspective, your outlook, and how you're approaching something in literally 30 seconds. And it's absolutely makes a difference.
Ricky, we missed the last question that we asked these kids. And I know we usually wrap, but I have to read you the response.
Okay.
My daughter, Hayden Sweeney. If you could give one piece of advice about speaking up to someone your age, what would it be? Don't wait until you feel ready or qualified enough. Clarity comes after you speak up, not before. Advocating for yourself doesn't mean you have to have all the answers. It means you're willing to show up, ask, and grow in public. The right people will respect that far more than silence. How did I raise such a son?
I don't know. You did such good work.
Oh my God. I also just realized I have a pimple patch on.
You did. I washed my hair for you this morning.
Oh my God.
She's brilliant. I've gotten to spend quite a bit of time with her in person and over the phone, when she was working on looking for a job, negotiating a job, brand stuff, just needed someone who wasn't her mom. And she is remarkable. Definitely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. You did not read that to me before we got on. So that was a beautiful surprise. Thank you.
Ditto.
My soul.
We've raised really incredible young women and men. And they are their own people. Obviously, it's not just what we have done, but it also just is a reminder for anyone who is raising kids and in a different stage of life that you're wondering if you're not an utter loser, because there were moments where I thought I was the biggest ever. I mean, teenage years, stop it right now. Like I thought like I'm throwing in the towel. So it really feels great to know that through osmosis, through all these incredible people that we've surrounded them with culturally, diversity, just that they have listened and taken away
I
and
agree.
they made it their own. And that is really incredible. So it's an honor to be her mom. So let's close, friends, as
Yeah.
much as I
All
want to
right.
say bye. It's 1:00 on the nose.
We need to go. It's time. We're done. So stop waiting and start choosing yourself and keep
Keep shooting the shit.
in the shit in a skirt. Love you guys.
Love
Bye.
you. Bye.